There's no easy way to say this. So I'll just come out and just not sugarcoat it at all. It's not your ads that are broken, it's your sales. Your sales suck. And if you aren't willing to admit this, then it's probably the reason why you aren't scaling the way that you know you should. And over the last 11 years of having grown my own agency to over $2 million a year, helping dozens of agencies scale to multi-7 and even 8 figures, I can say with confidence that this is actually a good problem to have. And I'm going to show you in this video how you can resolve this sales bottleneck within just 7 days. All right, so why is it easier to blame ads than admit that there's an actual sales bottleneck? Well, you see, as business owners, we want to believe that we're freaking flawless at sales, absolute G's when it comes to closing deals, when the truth is that we're probably not. And so on a very basic level, it would be easier to deflect that responsibility and blame the ads for not producing the absolute perfect, qualified, ready to throw the card down type of lead, where as soon as you say one word, they're just wooed by you and they just have to sign up. And so more often than not, it's the inability to take someone from cold to sold that is actually the bottleneck. Because look, at the end of the day, if your ads are producing someone that is in your niche and that has the intent to solve the problem that you claim you can help them solve, what else do you need? Every single day you have literal 16, 17, 18-year-olds finding a credit card or money to be able to pay for their first agency program, yet you're telling me that there's a business owner out there with real payroll and overhead to cover that can't pay for marketing? And so why do most agency owners avoid working on their sales? Because it's a lot easier to believe this myth that the best advertising out there, saying the perfect thing, writing the perfect thing, having the best landing page ever will somehow turn into just this flood of leads that are just ready to buy, when that's not the case with any cold advertisement. It is your job to get them to the call with ads. The ads there simply to create the demand for the sale, meaning it's the ad's job to get someone to book a call, nothing more. And it's week after week that I keep hearing these excuses from some of the clients that I've worked with or some of the students that I've had in one-on-one that say to me, yeah, but these ads were producing intro calls for us that were more likely to convert. And then we look at the actual ads and you realize it's the exact same ad. The only difference was that the ads produced these good leads on a weekend and the other bad leads during the week. And that's not even to say that that's the real reason why they were good or bad. It's literally the same ad and the same ad account, yet the perception is that they're not as good because maybe it is the day of the week, or maybe it's the actual strategy that's being used, or maybe it's the copy. It's always about the ads, but not about what was actually said on the sales call. You see, on the ads front, we're tracking CPMs and cost per click and click-through rate and show-up rate and all that stuff. But then for the sales side, it's just, they didn't close. Okay, well, why? Why didn't they close? What was the reason? There's all these other steps that went into creating the failure that was not closing the sale, yet it's just pushed aside as, it was a bad lead. And so how my sales process evolved in the process of scaling to $2 million a year mainly was actually going back and listening to my sales calls. It's so important to take this structured approach in your ads and in your sales to actually look at the different parts of the process and see where there may be a bottleneck. Like, for example, on a landing page, if it's only converting at, say, 5%, we know that we could bring that up to 7, 8, or even beyond 10%, and we'll see an overall drop in our cost per lead. Well, what about the sales call? How are we introducing our product? How are we setting the intention or the frame of the call? How are we actually leading up to the process of then pitching? How long is the pitch? There's all these different things that are so important to consider when looking at the sales process. But again, it's just completely overlooked by most agency owners. And the biggest mistake that I made early on in my sales journey was thinking that this person didn't close because they didn't have the budget. When really, when I would see someone come in that was doing less than like $500,000 a year, I mentally opted out and I'd say to myself, they're not likely to close. Well, guess what? If you go, say, onto a race car track and you say to yourself, I'm not going to beat my time, I'm not going to beat my time, you're not going to beat your time. If you go into the gym and you say to yourself, I'm not going to beat my personal record, you're not going to beat your personal record. It's a mental thing. And that's the thing that most agency owners are not willing to admit, that they box prospects into these categories of this person's likely to close because of something that I made up, and this person is not likely to close because of something I made up. And they put so much significance on revenue, Yet they overlook the fact oftentimes, and this is a big mistake that I made, which was that I wasn't actually looking side by side at the close rate of people that were financially unqualified versus people that were qualified. And more often than not, what I saw and what I see to this day is that a lot of agency owners actually close at a higher percentage people that are financially unqualified. There's this big assumption out there that if you just get the richest prospects that are willing to spend the most on advertising, that you're going to be great at closing them. How do you know that? How do you know you're a beast at closing these higher, more sophisticated revenue individuals? Where's the proof? Where's your data to back that up? And that's the issue. That we're going off of assumptions over here, and we make these emotional decisions about our leads, and we're like, oh, well, these are unqualified, these are bad. You know what I do now? I treat every lead as qualified so long as they show up to the call and they are in my target demographic. Not by revenue size, but by actual just, are they a roofer? Are they a painter? Are they an agency owner? Are they a chiropractor? If they check those two boxes, that they have intent, meaning they show up and they're of that demographic, then it's a sales issue that you're not converting them into a closed deal. I just got off of a sales call earlier on where I was talking to this guy about his med spa agency and how he's got this great offer, but he hasn't been able to scale it because he just doesn't know what to say in his ads. And I didn't close him. I'm being completely transparent with you. I didn't close him because I think I got way too confident about me being able to help him and the value that I'd already given him, that when he got to the part where he was like, dang, like this is a lot of money to invest right now. I don't feel like I have the budget, but he saw the value. It was like I wasn't able to overcome that objection, but guess what? I'm still going to follow up with him. I'm going to talk to him, and I know I'll eventually get him, but today wasn't my day, and I got to accept that rather than blaming the Facebook ads for it. And I'll never forget that there's this agency that I was working with just about 5 months ago that I kept telling, hey, you guys don't have an ads problem, you have a sales problem. You guys are consistently getting book calls at about 100, 150, which isn't even that much in the scale of all the info products and all these other businesses that I've advertised for, because ultimately, if you're able to get a call for even under $200, you're probably in a good spot. And so these guys were getting all these calls, but they kept being really butthurt about the fact that these people that were coming in, they weren't doing as much revenue as they wanted, and the really qualified people were far and few in between that would come through, and they would literally just mentally opt out on the sales calls with these lower revenue individuals. And when we looked at the numbers, it was so clear as day to me. And for the first time, they realized that actually we have been treating these leads differently. So if there's one thing you take away from this video is treat all your leads equally. Do not pass and separate them based on their revenue levels. I know that generally speaking, the ones that make more money theoretically should be able to spend more, but the biggest thing is intent. Like if they really want to grow their business, if they really want to scale, if they really want all the benefits associated with making more money, and they believe your product can help them do that, and it's a no-brainer and it's zero risk for them, then frick, why wouldn't they be able to find the money to do that? People every day find money to put down payments on fricking homes and apartments. This is marketing we're talking about. This is about making them money pretty much immediately. Why wouldn't they find a way to do that? And so here's the metric you want to look at to just know for sure if you have a sales bottleneck or not. If you are not turning at least 15% of anyone that gets on a call with you into a sale, then you have a sales issue, all right? That means anyone that literally booked a call and showed up, I don't care if it was an intro call, I don't care if it was a demo call. If that person got on just one call with you, that counts as them getting on a call. And if you didn't close at least 15% of those people, there's a sales issue over there, all right? Also, if your show up rate, from intro to demo, for example, or from call booked to call showed, is less than 50%, all right, you got a sales issue. So look at those metrics, see if you actually have ads issue or a sales issue, and focus your attention on what actually matters. Like I all the time have people coming to me, getting on my one-on-one strategy sessions, being like, hey, we've got an ads issue, da-da-da-da, and I look at their numbers and I'm like, man, I've got the benefit of hindsight from my own agencies and the benefit of working with so many others, and I can tell you, you don't have a lead volume issue. You don't even have a lead quality issue. You have a sales issue. And so I'll direct them instead to some sales trainer. I'm not the one that you want to work with. And heck, even me sharing this over here, it's not like I'm some sales guru, but I know at the very least noticed after working with just so many ad accounts and so many businesses that they overestimate the power of actually just having a good sales management system. And so what that looks like over the next 7 days, if you want to implement correctly, is make sure you listen to every single one of your calls, especially the first 10 minutes and especially the last 10 minutes. That's going to be very crucial. Okay, are you building affinity? Are you actually speaking to the prospect in a way that makes them feel like they're understood, they're being heard, and that you're on the same page? Or are you just moving the sales process along to get through with it and get to the close as soon as you can? Because there really is something to be said about not going to the next step unless the previous step is fully covered. Okay, it's like you can't bake freaking bread if you haven't fermented the yeast properly, if you haven't let it sit for enough time. And that's the thing, there's some things that you just can't shortcut. You have to spend time. And some people oftentimes are even just trying to cram the sales process into like this 45, 60-minute call, when in reality, you probably need a little bit longer to just overcome all their worries and objections and be forthcoming and asking them if they have any issues with what you've shared, if they see any reason why it wouldn't work, etc. And so the reason why I say this is a good problem is because if you're getting lead flow and you just aren't closing, well, guess what? You've solved your volume issue. You've got people booking on your calendar. You've got people raising their hand saying, yes, I want to work with you. And now that it comes down to the sales, it's really just that you have to get better at turning and persuading people that what you have is truly that valuable, it's truly that risk-free, and it's truly that transformative that if they don't go with you, that they're missing out. And once you solve this bottleneck, that's where you're able to squeeze more out of the current ad spend that you have and potentially take it from unprofitable to break even to really profitable, which then you can take those profits and inject it back into the ads and then scale. That's why it's so important to actually have sales on dial. That's why it's so important to have sales on lock, because if you run ads and your sales system is broken, well, guess what? You're only going to magnify the problem. Okay, if your speed to lead sucks, if your follow-up sucks, if you're not getting people onto the call to show up, if you're not closing people, all this is going to get magnified. You're going to have, 2, 3, 4x the amount of calls you're getting on, and that issue is just going to arise more because now the frequency of calls you're doing is more, but that problem was never solved. So instead of having more sales, you're just having more sales issues. And I have seen over and over again, the agencies and the businesses that get serious about sales and really dedicate the same amount of time and attention to figuring out the little nuts and bolts that make a successful sales process, I've seen them literally double their revenue in a matter of 60 to 90 days. I'm saying double the revenue. Can you imagine that? Going from where you are now to 2 or even 3x more than what you have right now. That's insane. And that can happen at the back of a great sales process because you now know confidently that if I pump sales volume, if I pump appointment volume, if I pump calls onto my calendar, then I know that I'm going to close them. That's a great place to be, isn't it? And so what's the next step to take right now if you're watching this is, one, to go and look at your data, see what your show rate and your close rate is on your first call. On anyone that showed up to a first call, what's your close rate on them? It's very easy to look at your demo to close rate because it's only the cherry-picked few that you're letting through into a demo and then be like, yeah, I closed them at 57%. Freaking mess around like that. The best companies out there are closing at 15%, okay? So if you're in around that range of 15% of all people that show up to a first call that you close, then you're in a good spot, okay? And then you can probably also scale your ads, or maybe it is an ads issue, and then, we can talk about that. And remember, if you keep blaming your ads instead of looking at your sales, you're just going to continue to have the same issues, you'll stay at the same level, and you won't grow. Being a business owner requires us to be multifaceted and to look at all areas of the business with the same focus and the same intensity and give it the same degree of importance, because otherwise we'll just stay stuck. I hope this is helpful. I'll see you on the next one.